So we all know that we're currently living through an energy crisis, essentially. So I'm just going to sort of set the scene a little bit for some of why that's happening. So I'm one of the co-founders of Carbon Co-op, which is one of the partners on the GMLEM project. We're a community benefit society based here in Greater Manchester. And most of my work is on the energy systems team. So it's important to say that we're very much on the consumer side. I'm not an expert in any sense in the energy supply market. So that's sort of why I was brought in as a critical friend, really, because I've had to try and understand that, but from an outside perspective. So why are our energy prices rising? So I think what you would think from reading the paper today is that, that Russia have invaded Ukraine and that energy prices have gone crazy, which is to some extent true, but we also have to look at the sort of the lead into this. So wholesale prices for gas in particular were going up very dramatically a year before the invasion of Ukraine. So we're here mainly to talk about electricity, but I'm going to start talking about gas because there's a very strong link between the two. So as we know, living through the pandemic, there was a period of energy prices, fossil fuel prices in particular, going down very dramatically as people started to work from home. Offices were closed, people weren't traveling. But then as things opened up again, we saw a huge surge in demand for gas. So particularly in China and the Asian market, where there was a desire to deal with a huge backlog of orders, basically. We've had this huge supply chain problem. So to try and deal with that, there was a huge spike in demand for gas. And we've also had very unusual weather. So we've had droughts in China and Brazil, which have caused hydroelectric problems. The winter of 2020 was unusually cold, so we used more gas. It was also not very windy, and it's not been very windy this year either. So we were getting a lower than average amount of energy that we expected to get from wind generation as well. And we've also had lots of both planned and unplanned outages. So if you think about things like nuclear power stations or, large generators like Drax, for example, they're on a very rigorous maintenance schedule. And you can't do that sort of maintenance from home. So the issue of the pandemic and people having to work with different working patterns meant that lots of scheduled maintenance was delayed, which has meant that as we've come out of the pandemic, all of that scheduled maintenance has had to happen in one go. It's also meant that some of that scheduled maintenance not happening has meant that we've had unplanned outages. So we've been able to get less of our energy from other areas. And there's been the background issue of the ongoing tension with Russia, which has meant that Russia hasn't stepped up to provide the additional gas that was necessary. And what that's meant is that the reserves that are held in Europe have been gradually depleted over the last sort of 18 months, really. So already by February last year, we saw our first energy price cap increase, and obviously we've seen a succession of those in the year since. So why does gas drive electricity prices? So in the 1990s, we saw something called the dash for gas. So I'll try not to. Can people see this graph? And so I don't know how much sense this makes, but you'll see this huge black swathe in the middle here, which is coal. So in the 1990s, there was a move to replace coal-powered generation with gas-powered generation, and that's been quite a sort of a successful process. As you'll see, all of that big purple swathe there is gas. So last year, 39% of the electricity that we used was generated by gas burning, by burning gas, essentially. So, so that's about double the EU average for electricity generation. So that makes the UK particularly vulnerable to gas price increases in terms of our electricity market. So some of you might be thinking, well, I'm on a renewable tariff. My energy is 100% from renewable energy and wind turbines and solar panels. So why is my power going up? And the fact is that wherever you buy your power from, whatever the source is, it all ends up just mixed up in a big bucket in the wholesale market, basically, and then it's sold to the highest bidder. So all your electricity supplier is doing is they're buying, they're making a commitment to buy as much electricity from a sustainable source as you have bought in your bill, but it doesn't mean that the energy that's coming through your pipes is, your wires, I should say, is sustainable. So it's also worth saying that there are a number of other elements that are bundled into your electricity bill, as well as just your what you pay for the actual energy you use. So you'll see this light blue swathe at the top, which is our sort of wind, hydro, and solar. So there has been a desire to increase that and to increase that rapidly. So we've seen what's called the green taxes that are placed on our electricity bills. Now some of these are environmental charges, but a lot of them are actually social charges. So that's where things like the warm homes grants and winter fuel payments, those come out of this pot. So we all pay a section to which is about 8% of our electricity bills currently, and that all goes into dealing with the sort of social and environmental things that we want to see happen. What we've also seen, because you may have noticed that with your bills going up, it's not just your per kilowatt price that's gone up, it's also the standing charges that have gone up quite dramatically. And the reason for that is that we're having to cover the cost of all of the energy companies that have gone bust in the last year. So that's being recouped from all of our bills. So in short, the current energy crisis has been a long time in development. Its reasons are very complex, and a lot of them are just to do with bad luck, really, and to our ability to respond technically to the pandemic. It has been greatly worsened by the Ukraine invasion, and it's going to get worse. So we know that electricity costs will remain high at least for the next year, and they will probably get significantly higher than they are currently. And while ever we have that dependency on gas for our electricity generation, that's going to remain the case, basically. So, right, so I will hand over to your thoughts and questions.
It's about the gas here. You say, is it from Russian or something? The gas where we use now? We use around about half of our gas comes more locally, so from the North Sea. So we're less exposed than lots of other countries like Germany, for example, to Russian gas. We get about 8% of our gas from Russia, which we've said we're going to remove from our supply by the end of this year. But obviously all of the other gas that's is going up in price as well, because other European countries are trying to do the same. So gas across the board is going up in price in response to attempts to stop buying Russian gas. Does that? Yeah. So how many percent of gas we use from the North Sea? Like, you know, most of it, or any, like, we have many oil rigs. My husband oil rigs.
in the North Sea. So you say most of them in North Sea. So I mean, if we can provide them, why do we buy from Netherlands or Russia or Germany?
Well, because the energy market is a global one. So we export around about half of North Sea gas, and we export about 80% of North Sea oil. So and the amount that we export is actually increasing at the moment. So that gas, like any other gas, is sold on international markets. So it will be sold to whoever pays the most for it.
Is the levy on the gas on the electric bill and also on the gas bill?
So most of the green tariffs at the moment are on electricity. So there was a discussion recently about whether they would move those levies onto gas, because it actually makes more sense that they're on gas, because it's mainly gas that we're trying to dissuade people from using. So, but that hasn't yet happened.
It's always puzzled me why electricity is 3 or 4 times more expensive than gas on a per therm unit, if you like. Yeah, if we're going to have gas-fired power stations, why is electricity not just a bit more expensive for the efficiency?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's to do with the fact that, you know, it's not a simple translation process. So you don't get a kilowatt of electricity from a kilowatt of gas that you put in, if that makes sense.
It's the ratio. I mean, it's 3 or 4 times the price, whereas the efficiency, I believe, was sort of 50-60%, not 25%.
And this is why we come on to these, you know, broader questions of how the energy market works, which is more what Cornwall Insight are going to talk about this afternoon, and all the different levels of the energy market.
Do you know where the 8% will come from once we stop going for financial?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's to be seen, really. So lots of our other gas comes from Norway, so it may be that we're able to get supplies there. You also saw that in the week leading up to the announcement that Boris Johnson did a sort of, you know, whirlwind lap around the world. So and one of those was a visit to Saudi Arabia, which is one of our oil suppliers. So yeah, there'll be a process, really, but it will depend on where we can get it from on the international market.
Gas from Norway is fundamentally the same gas from the same North Sea, just shipped to Norway and then shipped back over to us first. Yes?
No, they have their own gas fields.
It is the same bit of water that they're under, and it's a very big planet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Norway's not that far away.
Yeah.
I'm not going to swim there.
Yeah, it just depends where it's being drilled for, essentially.
Norwegian territorial side of the same bit. Cool.
Yeah.
How is everyone kind of feeling about the current situation? I suppose it's just worth kind of getting some of that out there, because we're going to be talking about energy markets and like buying and selling energy, and it'd just be interesting to, you know, if you feel comfortable to kind of just share how you're feeling, or, you know, even if it's just one word that sums it up.
It's annoying here, because why can't we do the same as France? France have capped it at 4%. Why can't we do that? Why are we so different?
I mean, France has a nationalised energy system, which we don't have. So that sort of control, I guess, from a governmental level is easier. Whereas in the UK we have a sort of market-based system, so our interventions are sort of by their nature market-based. So we can, you know, there were calls to reduce VAT, for example, on energy, which is something that could be done. But the government doesn't have control over the energy market in the same way that they do in France.
Say that France has 56 nuclear reactors at its disposal and we have 11, and most of ours are smaller than theirs. So then when you have those, the cost of uranium doesn't change much. When it does, it doesn't matter. So once you have them, they keep running and running. But we don't have those. So.
Yeah, so this is true, and we're also I think it's important to say as well though that the price of nuclear power in the UK has also been increasing, as has the price of wind power, as has the price of solar, because in a way we're buying off a common pool. So it's so I think in a way with the French example, it's easier to control because they have control, if that makes sense.
But it's not the cost of the uranium, is it? It's the cost of disposal
doesn't matter.
afterwards.
It's irrelevant. In France, because I put myself at the table, I actually do energy policy stuff with the Tyndall Centre, and I spend my time staring at Excel spreadsheets. But in France, they actually run reactors because the fuel costs less than the maintenance cost of shutting them down. So when you turn things off, you break things. So they just run them and sell the electricity into Eastern Europe at some ridiculous low price simply because it's cheaper than not. So, yeah, once you just have nuclear reactors, they just go until they break, like Dungeness, Hunterston, and so on. And I would hesitate to say unplanned outages of those units because everyone in the nuclear industry knew they were going to break, but the accountants at the energy policy will always assume they run forever. And for everyone, the Hunterston was taken out by cracks we've been expecting to appear for 30 years. It's just they finally appeared.
I thought they'd learned that earlier on from Calder Hall, though.
Yeah, but the problems that killed Calder Hall happened much more quickly in the newer reactors. They were cheaper to build if you made them. I won't go into basically the problem was created by building smaller, cheaper reactors. But we've been sort of counting down the days until that problem appears, and it's finally appeared. But the accountants always go, it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen, and then it does. But it wasn't really expected by anyone in the industry. So
Are you able to do a quick explanation of why solar, wind and any tidal and renewable energy prices are also going up at the same rate as all the other fossil fuels, given that the sun is still up there? And I appreciate the answer to that might be capitalism.
Essentially it is, yeah. So I think if you, so what's a good analogy for this? So I guess
the price of panels is going up.
That is also true. That we do have supply chain issues globally, which mean that and also we've got a lack of installers as well. So I think you will see increases in solar install prices, but the price of generating that power hasn't changed. But the price that they get for their electricity has changed very dramatically. So because it all just gets mixed up in a big bucket and then it's sold to the highest bidder.